Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena Shoup. I am a CPA and mom of three, and I'm running a virtual bookkeeping business mostly from my home. You're in the right place if you're a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you know that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies to help you start and grow a bookkeeping or accounting business, I hope you stick around. All right. Welcome back to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. Today, I have yet another amazing guest for you. His name is Paolo. He is a tax consultant with a mission, teaching people how to find a balance between money and happiness using numbers, which, if you've been in my world for a while, you know that I am kind of more on the woo-woo side of the whole money mindset type of stuff. So I'm really excited to have this special guest for you today. And what I'm going to do is I like to showcase different types of accounting businesses. And today we're going to talk about how you built your tax practice and what makes you different. And we'll just kind of go from there and have a conversation. So without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, how you got started?
Well, I would love that. Well, first of all, thanks for your time from this amazing opportunity. So thank again. I'm Paolo Rigo. That's my full name. I was born in Verona, where I live. I'm married with an amazing daughter. I started with bookkeeping and tax advice in 2007, a while ago. I started by myself, probably like everyone. And now I'm the CEO and founder of Studio Rigo that goes under my name. And there are 25 people working with me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a tax expert, so I know what it feels like. I'm a certified by the Chamber of Commerce and assistant for the judge at the civil court. And actually, I'm working with chambers of commerce, embassies, and consulates, literally from all over the world. And actually, I'm helping thousands of people coming from abroad, starting or let's say planning to start living in Italy. This is what I do.
Awesome. Thank you. I had no idea how large your team was. So this is really exciting to dive into this with you. So how did you decide to work mainly? Because your practice is built basically around serving expats wanting to work and live in Italy, correct? So how did you decide to shift your practice into that area? What did that look like for you?
Well, definitely because I think that in the economy, there is the principle called supply and demand. I started in 2007 with a client coming from the US. It was an American airline pilot, I guess, I have to remember. And it was a pretty tricky case, something that kicks you out of the comfort zone, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had to improve my knowledge about that because I had no clue about how to move forward. So I was trying to understand if I was more scared or thrilled by the opportunity. It took a while for me to realize that. And then, well, literally it was word spreading, word to mouth. Came out that few more clients were looking for the same service. So I had to keep studying, improving. And then probably I can tell that right now, we are very proud to say that we are in the top 10 of the tax firm here in Italy, able to help expats. Definitely out of my comfort zone, but I love it.
Yeah. There's a lot of growth on the other side of that fear of getting out of your comfort zone. Would you agree?
Well, definitely. It's a very huge step. You're scared at the very beginning, but I think that you have to embrace the pain and the feeling inside of you, because learning is something that can push you out of the comfort zone, but at the same time, making you feel a better person, not just a better professional.
Absolutely. So do most of your clients are they more on the employee side, or do they have their own businesses? What does that look like?
Well, I can tell you that we offer a very wide range of services. The lowest hand, we can find the pensioner that is moving from, let's say, from California to the south of Italy because he wants to enjoy the cool weather and the amazing food. And the top hand, we can see someone coming from New York City, owning stocks of the, Empire State Building, probably. So from business owner to the pensioner, we're not that picky about our clients.
Okay. Most of the stuff that you do for them is pretty much the same. And I'm assuming you've streamlined things pretty well.
It's a challenge. I'm telling you why, because every case is different. Here in Italy, we are very known and famous because we have the gold medalling bureaucracy. And I can tell you it's true. Rules are keep on updating every single time. So it's very hard to see a base to share with our clients. We must update our information. We must update our acknowledgement. So every single time we get in touch with a prospect, because there is a huge difference between a prospect and a client, we want to understand if and how we can be a good fit for him or for her. Because probably he's just looking for some information. And in that case, this is the reason why, and now I'm copying your stuff. This is the reason why we're sharing a lot of information on social media and on YouTube.
Awesome. So you talked about deciding if someone is a good fit for you. So how do you go about that process? I like to introduce people to different approaches and how to find the right clients, because I think it's really important to work with clients you enjoy working with. So how do you discern what makes them a good fit for you besides just their coming to live and work in Italy?
Well, it's very hard for me to be 100% honest about it because, of course, now I'm 38. I have 15 years of my experience. But at the same time, I started with no clients. So I know the feeling when you cannot wait to close the first deal because you need the money to pay the rent and the bill and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think that you have to be very honest with yourself and think that if you're a hammer, don't assume that every client is a nail.
Right.
Be honest with yourself because a client is just a match, but it's something that must work for you and for the client himself. So the only way to figure out is, in my experience, I find it very useful, at least to have a free call with the client to establish, let's say, a very quick relationship with the client and see what he's looking for, what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And this is a tip that I would like to share with everyone. I don't know if you ever heard about the Win Without Pitching Manifesto.
I don't know if I have. Maybe. Sounds familiar, but I haven't read it.
I recommend it, for everyone listening right now. Basically, one of the principle, the author says, you have to kill the engagement at least 3 times. So you have to start clean the conversation with the client, focusing on his needs with a little bit of empathy. Without hearing this big monster in your head claiming and screaming because you need the money. If you can do that, well, then yes, I think that you will succeed and become a very good professional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is that your overall approach to how you end up landing clients? I'd love for you to talk about that whole process.
Well, let's say that it's very easy because, of course, everyone has some client that you cannot wait to kick out of the door. Okay. I'm not talking about those kind of clients.
Right.
I'm talking about, listen and ask the client's needs. It takes time to listen. It takes time to take notes. You have to start empty the conversation and not driven by emotions. Because sometimes you like the project of the client, sometimes you like his business, or waiting for the big time to talk about money. You have to respect the client. You have to retreat and follow every single time you hear objections, and you have to be able to embrace his feelings. He could probably be scared because you just met. He's looking for the less risky situation, and you're looking for a young guy fresh with a degree. This is how it goes. You have to take notes and listen and see how it goes. Be open.
Yeah. We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well.
It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there.
Yeah, that's something that I always kind of recommend and tell my students is to just be open to the outcome going either way. Because when you do attach yourself to, landing the client, or like you said, you're kind of desperate for the money in the bank, then you're going to not only not see red flags, but you might present yourself in a way that makes the client feel like you know what you're doing and that you are a good fit for them, but you might not actually have the skills or the knowledge to help them in the way that they need. So it goes both ways. It can be detrimental for both of you. So is that something that you would agree on?
100%. I'm gonna give you a high five.
Okay, virtual high five.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's really hard to approach things that way when you are starting off. So can you maybe give an example of when you were starting out, if you can remember that far back? Because I have a lot of listeners that are brand new to starting their business. If you, I would say probably one of your pieces of advice is to try to not attach yourself to the outcome and just be a good listener. But can you offer any other advice around maybe holding a sales conversation or meeting with clients for the first time to try to get your first clients? What would you say to that brand new business owner?
Well, I remember myself talking with a client the very first time. I was pretty thrilled and nervous. I wasn't barely able to speak. My voice was really trembling and different from the way it sounds right now.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I was scared about talking about money because I was thinking, I have no experience. I'm young. I was 23, 34. What happens if I ask for too much? Am I worth it? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So when you have doubts about yourself, when you're not 100% sure about what you're doing, if you don't know you're talking about yourself, instead about thinking what your skills or what your weak point on, why don't you start with the client? Focus on the client. It's very easy. It's easier. Like an interview.
Yes.
When you have to interview someone else, you forget about your own problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interview your clients and see. A very common mistake that I made was talking about money first, anchoring low. So in other words, it means for all the brand new listeners, when you have to talk about money, of course, you have to start from somewhere. And let's say that, I don't know, you have to make a tax return and you typically charge $1,000. If you start with 1,000, more likely, if the client feels like you're not a good fit, is going to ask for a discount. Mm. And if you're desperate for money, what's going to happen? You're going to agree with them. You're going to give a 50 or 80% in discount because you're desperate for the work. But if you, let's say, if you anchor high, if you anchor to 5,000, what happens then? Worst case, you get more than 1,000. Mm-hmm. But you have to say it. I remember the first time that I said, okay, how much you charge? 1,000. 1,000 per hour. This is my fee. Mm-hmm. It takes confidence, but confidence is something you can make through time, through experience. So don't be scared about practicing. Don't be scared about talking about money with the client, because this is the only way you can improve. This is my biggest lesson that I can share with you and with your audience so far. I made a lot of mistakes. Okay. I'm not saying that I'm the number one, but I'm a learning machine. And every single time that I make a mistake, I clap my hands because I say, okay, I suck less than the previous day. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. I spoke on a panel recently, and one of the questions that it was for women in entrepreneurship. And one of the questions that we were asked was to give examples of some of the mistakes that we've made in entrepreneurship. And I had I have a really hard time I remember mistakes that I've made, obviously, because I've tweaked things and improved them over the years, but I basically was just like, I don't really view anything as a huge mistake. It's always a learning opportunity. But you have to have that skill of reflecting on what happened and changing it and doing better next time. So
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the money conversation. So basically what you're saying, and this is what I actually teach my students too, is that you have to actually practice saying the dollar amount that you want to charge, which sounds really crazy, but if you don't, you're going to grossly undervalue yourself. And you might even think going into the meeting, okay, I'm not taking any clients for under $1,000 a month, but you never actually said $1,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 out loud. So as soon as they ask you what you charge, you're immediately just going to be like $500 because you're so uncomfortable with saying the words of the dollar amount. So that's, I think, a really great piece of advice to actually practice. And you don't have to practice on every prospect. You can actually just practice by yourself or with friends and family, right?
Definitely.
So.
I don't know if I'm allowed. I would like to share some phrases or some sentences that I would like to use. Well, let's say I was used to use when I first started. And by the way, don't forget that even a machine, even a robot is able to give you numbers, but only you can read numbers in the right way. Mm-hmm. This is what makes you unique. You're not just a bookkeeper. You're someone able to read numbers and translate them to your client. Don't forget about it.
Yeah.
So what I used to say is when we have to address money dance, okay, let's call it. I used to say, okay, with the client, dear Mrs. Prospect, before we got too far, sounds to me like you're a smaller client than we're used to doing business with. I'm just a little concerned about your ability to afford us. So saying so, I just switch. Now you have to prove me that you can afford me. I'm telling you that I'm higher than what you can say. I'm higher than what you can think. Now, let's see if you have the money to pay me. You have to prove it.
Interesting.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. The psychology behind that, for certain people, it might make it like, oh, now it's a challenge. So
yeah,
I'm going to
make
sure that I can afford him because he's obviously knows what he's doing. So is that a phrasing that you learned early on, or is that from that book that you were just talking about?
Let's say it's practicing, changing, make a mistake and getting back on track. Mm-hmm. It's always asking. See, even this time I made a question at the very end. It's like using a sonar with a client. You don't have to assume anything, because probably I hear, in my experience, I find that people tend to invest time and money for what they think it's important. Because, for example, I'm ready to invest $1,000 for a bag, while my wife she's ready to invest $10,000 for the same bag of Gucci or Prada, who knows. Mm-hmm. So people tend to spend money on what they value. So how do you know if your client is ready to invest more than what you think you can charge? Because price is what they pay, value is what they get. Give them value and then ask for the money. Does it make sense?
Yes. So how do you give value before they actually engage with you in order to prove your price, basically?
Well, it's really important to understand what the client is looking for, because it's very different if it's looking for some information, so some validation, or for example, for a bookkeeping stuff or a tax return stuff. So I want to know what is the pain point. Sometimes they come up with, okay, I need a VAT number. By the way, the VAT number is the code given you by the review agency here in order to start a business. They say, I need a VAT number because I want to do X, Y, and Z. But then talking, making the right questions, realize that they don't need that because they're making less than the minimum range they have to reach in order to get the VAT number. So they don't need it. Or probably they start with, I need to file my tax return. Okay, great. And this is not a question that I make a lot of time. You might need a tax return. Okay, save it for the next time. You might need a tax return. I pause and then I say, but let me ask you a few questions just to make sure. I hate when clients self-diagnose what they need. I'm the professional. You're the client. I hate it. Do you agree with me?
Yes, that is so good. I'm writing this down. I'm taking notes.
I'm flattered right now. You're the celebrity. I'm the host.
No,
what's happening?
I'm hosting the international tax celebrity over here from Italy. So you might need a tax return, but let me ask you a few questions first, just to be sure. And then you go into asking them pointed questions that's going to help you get to the answer of whether or not they need a tax return or whatever that pain point is.
That's right.
And inherently they're seeing the value in your expertise in that discovery meeting before they've ever engaged with you.
That's right. And I feel like someone is waiting for the following, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the pen in your hand?
Yep. Go for it.
Well, of course it depends. Okay. We're just role playing right now. Okay. Don't play it like with every client, but you can use it very often. Usually when I hear something like, okay, I need to know what happens when I file my taxes in Italy, what are the obligations and the deadlines? And I feel like, for example, they're trying to steal some information because there is a thin line between proving them the expert and resolving your problem. I never do that. So I used to stop them and I say, are the following questions important for your finances and your future income? Of course, it's a yes. Otherwise, we're not speaking. We're not talking.
Right.
And when I say yes, usually it's, oh, of course, yes. Okay, I smile. And I say, okay, it means something. So if what you're hearing is right, as a professional, okay, I take the responsibility of the content. If what you're hearing is right, you can move on with your life and business. It only makes sense. But what happens if it's wrong? You have to redo this process again with another consultant or another tax professional, or worst case, deal with some fines and mistakes in the future, right? Mm-hmm. I'm giving you the option. I'm not saying that pay premium or take the risk, but I'm very close. So this is the following step, the main one. I understand as a tax consultant that there is always some risk associated with picking the wrong vendor, because we know that when the client is talking to us, probably is doing the same with other professionals. It's just trying to find the best way to make the less risky choice. Not the most expensive or the less expensive, the less risky choice. Mm-hmm. So the last one is, what criteria do you use to determine if I'm a good fit for you or not? Someone could potentially look for a low price, or someone able to speak English in my case, or a good looking guy, or someone with experience, for example, in digital nomads, who knows? So if I know what you value, I'm able to put the price on that product. I'm able to put the price on the service. Otherwise, I'm just shooting a price in the dark.
Yeah. So this is the key point that I feel when other people talk in our industry about value pricing. This being able to know what the client values is the hardest piece. So it's really important, the type of questions that you ask to get to that information. And I feel like this question that you just gave us, people should be writing this down, is what criteria do you use to determine if we're a good fit working together, basically, paraphrasing.
That's right.
So anyone listening, if you have to rewind that, write it down, because that question is going to help you get closer to understanding what it is that they actually value.
That's right. Remember, you have to price the client, not the service.
Yes.
And get ready to hear something like you charge too much or too expensive. If you don't hear it, you're not charging enough.
Yes, 100%.
You have to be expensive. But by the way, we're taking something for granted. You have to be a top quality professional.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's definitely like, that's always the part that goes without saying, but I think it needs to be said, because you can't charge a premium if you're not delivering that service.
Well, by the way, this is one of the point included in the Win Without Pitching manifesto. Okay, I'm not saying that this is the favorite book of mine, but definitely something you have to read at least once a week. The author says that you have to build your expertise quickly, not becoming the number one, but you have to keep improving your skills, because that what makes you different from a competitor.
Yes.
Never stop learning. I consider myself a learning machine.
Me too. I put such a high value on continuing education and personal and professional growth that, as a side note, I was just last night putting together job descriptions, because as our team is growing, we're going to have to be hiring some more. And I've had to really sit and think about what our core values as a business are. And one of them is education. So I want to require my team to do continuing education, even if they don't need it, even if they don't have a certification where it's required, like the CPA or whatever. I still think it's so important to always have that growth mindset and want to learn, that I'm just going to make it part of the job requirement, is 30 to 45 minutes a week of some sort of continuing education, whether it's learning more about the software that you're working in, staying on top of the software updates, staying on top of rules and regulations. There's so much in our industry that's always changing. So it's just really important to stay on top of the things that matter for your clients.
Definitely. And taking notes too, by the way.
Great. We can compare afterwards.
Definitely.
Luckily, this is recorded and I'll be transcribing it. So, but yeah, so thank you for bringing all this value to our listeners. I truly appreciate you being willing to come on the podcast and putting yourself out there to be on the podcast, because most of my guests I kind of handpick, and you and I kind of built a relationship. I think it was through Instagram, and just started chatting. And I obviously knew you had a ton of value to provide. And I love hearing about different styles of business. So I don't do tax. I obviously in the US, not in Italy. So our businesses are very, very different. But I think it's important to showcase that for our listeners, so that people can understand that you truly can build whatever type of business that you want, that serves you and your purpose. So with that, do you have any other major key points that you wanted to share today to help the new or seasoned accounting professional in their business endeavors?
Well, I can tell that starting is probably the hardest part of the process, because you're scared. You have no clue about what's coming next for you. You have no idea how to face your client, how to face a mistake. And this is something I'd like to share with all of you. It's normal to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. Simply because, of course, when you have a degree, you know something about bookkeeping, you know something about probably obligations, but you don't know, for example, how to file the very first tax return. You don't know how to, keep track of everything for a business owner. Or what happens, for example, if you send a wrong PDF document to your client and it made automatically a mistake in the payment. So this is one of the good reasons why you have to charge more, because if you charge more, you have the resources to cover that mistake.
Oh, I never really thought of it that way. I thought you were going to take it in a different direction and say, when you charge more, you hold yourself to higher standards. But that doesn't really fix the mistakes that happen, because they will happen anyways. So I love this approach that you're taking.
Thank you. You're making my day, by the way. A lot of compliments. I needed them.
Good. We're all in it together. We need to support each other. There's so much business for all of us. Obviously, you serve a completely different client base than I do, so we're in no ways competition of each other. But I definitely, if anyone has bookkeeping clients or tax clients that are going to be moving abroad into, Europe or Italy, definitely send them Paolo's way to Studio Rigo, right, is the name of your business. And we're going to link all of your information in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on here today and chatting with me, bringing tons of great advice to our listeners. And do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, just try. Just go. Move. Never stand still.
I agree. All right. We will talk to you later. Thank you again.
Thank you again for being so pleasing. I love this conversation. I love being helpful for all of you. And please remember that bookkeeping is just something that you can do, but there is a lot more that you can offer.
Yes, absolutely. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Be ambitious.